Hey, Russell from Adelaide West Physio and Pilates here. I want to present to you today the mountain metaphor, also known as the Twin Peaks model. And it's a metaphor designed to help people understand pain better. And it's often used in the context of people that have persistent pain or chronic pain. But as you'll see, it's just as relevant for people that have acute pain or nociceptive pain, something that's related to something that's happening in the tissues or dominant from nociceptive cause, something going on in the tissue. So this on the left this is our example of the average person with normal pain experiences, and this is how pain works in their body. So let's say, for example, you're doing an activity, you're running a marathon, and there's a point in the marathon where pain starts to become a thing. And when pain becomes a thing, so this is your protect by pain line. This is the point where in your body, the experience of pain is produced as a way of protecting you, because that's its primary role, is to protect you from something that it judges to be in danger. So there's our protect by pain line. Now you can choose to continue on with that activity. You can choose to continue on, and you might get to a point where tissue tolerance is being tested. You get to a point where there's actually tissue damage, and you might continue to go on still and push through that, particularly if you're doing something that's really important to you, like running a marathon, like you're at the 41k mark, pushing on to finish it off, or like you're playing in a grand final, or like you've got a really important thing that you need to get done by the end of the day. You might choose to push on, and in a lot of cases you can keep going even though you've done injury. But the point here is that you've got this protect by pain line, and it's a separate line. This is a really important thing to get. It's a separate line to where tissue fails, where injury happens. The protect by pain line happens first. And if you think about it, the old brain, the old body is pretty clever, and it's got the ability to be somewhat preemptive, and particularly if it's had experiences before, or you have knowledge of something that's happened to someone else before, or you're in a situation where you're feeling vulnerable, or in a workplace you don't enjoy. There's millions of factors that can be involved, but all of those things allow your brain, your central nervous system, to process the situation and decide that, you need protecting, you're in danger. Protect by pain. If you keep going, if you choose to, there's a point where tissue gets tested and can fail. That's tissue tolerance. So that's the first takeaway message. Pain, onset, and damage don't mean the same thing, and they're not the same thing. And in pain's job isn't to give you a measure of how much tissue damage you've got, which is a hard thing to get your head around for most people. And I think it's because from the moment we're born, really, we have that. It's not really taught to us, but I think there's an assumption that if something hurts this much, then it must be damaged this much. And if something hurts more, then the amount of damage is going to be more. And there's an assumption of equivalence. And that's not how pain is, because most of us can think of an amazing pain story, a situation where they've had pain that has been quite different to what they perhaps would have expected with the amount of tissue injury, which is what the amazing pain stories are there to remind us, that equivalence, it doesn't hold true. You can do things to yourself without realizing it. If you're in an emergency situation, you can have something really bad happen to you, but not experience pain at the time. So they're not the same thing. The other big takeaway is that there is a buffer. So there's a difference between the two. Now, in a trauma situation, the onset may well be almost simultaneous. It might be simultaneous. You break your leg, it hurts at the time, for sure. You know, it's not like you have to break your leg a little bit more before it starts to hurt. This is an illustration of how it works in your body, and it does help. It certainly has helped me to get my head around the thought that pain is there for protection more than it is for measuring tissue damage. And the other thing that's really important to say too is that these 2 points aren't fixed. So, for example, your protect by pain line might not be exactly there every day. In fact, it's being judged moment by moment, depending on what's going on in your life. So it might take more to create pain, or it might take less to create pain moment to moment. And tissue tolerance too isn't fixed, is it? That's why you exercise. You know, you can make your muscles more tolerant, you can make your bones more tolerant, you can make your cardiovascular system more tolerant. So they're plastic, that's bioplasticity, and that's the reason that you move and you do exercise, is to increase your tissue tolerance. So don't for a moment think that those 2 lines are fixed in place, because they're not. And the next part of the mountain metaphor shows you how that they're not fixed in place. So if we move to the mountain on the right, now we've got a situation. This is someone that's perhaps had an injury, has had pain for a period of time, and sure enough, their tissue tolerance isn't the same. They might have ended up with a little bit less tissue tolerance. Not the tissues aren't quite as fit, but along with that, the protect by pain line is different too, and this is worth thinking a little bit deeply about. If you're someone that does have pain of an ongoing nature, see if you can get hold of this idea. So tissue tolerance has dropped, protect by pain line has dropped a lot. And the thing that's noticeable then is that buffer is bigger. And the buffer is representing the amount of protection that your body is creating, if you like, to keep you away from your tissue tolerance. So the protect by pain line is another way of saying you're being super well protected, you're being extra protected, you're being kept well clear of reaching your tissue tolerance. So it means that if you're doing an activity, it doesn't take as much of that activity for it to start to become painful, but there's actually more of a buffer before you get to a point where you're going to do any damage. And that's a really critical concept for the person with ongoing pain, because once again, we're kind of not, well, I keep going to say taught, but I think it's an intuitive thing that we consider if something hurts, it's a sign to stop. If something hurts, it's a sign of injury. And particularly in a situation of persistent pain, it's not the case that the pain's there and it's a signal that your body is trying to protect you. So you never ignore, that's the other thing that's got to be said. You never ignore pain. It's always there for a reason, it's there for a purpose. Now, the purpose might be an extra layer of protection, but it's there for a purpose. So I'm not advocating ignoring pain at all. But what I am saying is that there are situations where the pain system can become more sensitive, more protective, more keen to jump in and keep you away from danger. This is the situation we're talking about. So you've got the extra buffer layer, and what it means is that someone that does have ongoing pain, if they continue to stay in the pain-free zone, then they don't really ever get a chance to do anything that's going to challenge that protect by pain line. Certainly not going to get anywhere that's going to challenge the tissue tolerance line. And it's the challenging of both of those things that will make you less sensitive and stronger, as long as they're done in a sensible way. So in the protect by pain line, there's kind of a zone to aim for where it may be in the zone of, you know, pain. There may be you usually do have to go into a bit of pain in order to do this, but the key is to understand the parameters and to understand why you're going into pain and you're not just doing it willy-nilly, because there usually is a point where if you go too far into it, you might have a flare-up, which is, you kind of want to avoid it if you can. It's not the end of the world, but because you often learn a lot from a flare-up, as long as you've got the right information and the right support, you understand what's going on, that it's your protection system going off a bit. But the idea is to operate just underneath the flare-up line, just thereabouts, so that you're, and I think of this as being a process of almost proving. You're proving that you're not creating any danger. You're proving that you're not re-injuring yourself. You're proving to your central nervous system that you're okay. And in doing so, helping that protection part of the system just to start to ease off a little bit. And then in doing that, as the protection comes down, the flare-up line starts to, well, protection line kind of goes up, doesn't it? It's the other way of looking at it. We're looking for the protect by pain line to start to become higher up, so it's not quite as protective. The flare-up line starts to go up too, and there'll be a point where you'll actually start to get some tissue benefit too, and your tissue tolerance will start to go up as well. So that's the concept behind helping someone with persistent pain. It's not to shy away from the pain. The key is to understand it. Like, it's really important to understand these kind of concepts so that you can exercise with confidence, with knowing that you're safe. And this is the whole idea behind the sore but safe that you might hear. You can do things that are sore, but you're not actually challenging the tissue to a point where it's going to fail. It's hard to, really. It's hard to because of the size of the buffer. So you're exercising in that sore but safe zone and gradually making your system less sensitive. And you're proving to your central nervous system that everything is okay. And from a cognitive point of view, understanding that things are okay and this is all right. And you're also proving to yourself by what you're achieving as well. You're able to do a little bit more today than you could do yesterday is the basic idea. And it might not be day-on-day improvements, it might be week-on-week improvements, but those little improvements are ways of proving to yourself at a conscious level, but also proving to your central nervous system and talking to it in a language that it can understand to say, actually, things are okay. Things didn't fall apart. I did that. I was a little bit sore, but I recovered. I didn't flare up. Do the same thing again tomorrow and follow it up with the same thing tomorrow, and then maybe increase it a little bit more, just another 10% maybe. That's the concept behind it. So I hope that makes sense. The mountain metaphor is really useful. If there's anything in this that didn't make sense, I'd encourage you to leave a comment below. I'm more than happy to talk further about this. I can create another video if there's something that I've missed out or something that isn't clear. But for people that have persistent pain, it's a really important model. I think for people, everyone, it's a helpful model just to get their head around what pain is really there for. And it may actually future-proof you somewhat if you have an idea of the fact that pain isn't necessarily about measuring tissue damage. It's there to measure the level of protection that your body, your brain, your central nervous system calculates that you need at that point in time. It's the brain's opinion